Hey everyone, I'm Gareth and this is DD for Dissecting Dexter, the internet's longest running Dexter podcast. Yes, I think it's true. When I started in 2010 between Dexter seasons 4 and 5, there was only Jeremy Headington's show out there and he called it quits a season or two later. There are a fair few out there now, but none can claim a 15-year run. I'd been podcasting a couple of years longer than that, but I'm very proud to still be standing after all this time. And it's thanks really for you lovely lot for listening. If I only had a small dog and a couple of goldfish listening, it would have been hard to keep at it. But so many of you, so many have stayed with me and I am so grateful. Anyway, I didn't mean this to turn into a love-in, but I just wanted to throw that out there as it's something I feel really proud of. Right, so today, it is Tuesday the 7th of January 2025 and we're back. We're back to talk some more Dexter Original Sin. It's really cold out there this week. We are just so unprepared for snow and ice in this country. It's ridiculous. It's the same every time. I know so many other places live with months of severe wintry weather and just get on with it. Systems are in place to help keep things moving, but here, I don't know, centimetre of snow and everything stops. It's winter and we're going to get cold weather and some snow occasionally. Luckily, I have a job where I can often work from home, so if the weather is bad, I don't always have to venture out in the car, which is great. Anyway, we are a week into the new year. All the Christmas decorations are packed away for another 11 months. What's usually a pretty depressing month is made so much brighter this year with some new Dexter, and I have to say, I'm loving it. The show and its stars are really impressing me and I'm finding very little really to criticise, and that makes this so much more of a pleasure. I still remember vividly the tough times in season 8 when I really wanted it to be great but it just wasn't, and I was running out of excuses podcasting about it and trying hard not to come across like some sort of apologist for the show. The feedback was full of so much negativity and it just wasn't much fun. This, though, it's been great. I don't think anyone had unreasonably high expectations, so the fact that it's been decent and fun has been a nice surprise for everyone. If you're listening to the podcast for the first time, thanks for trying us out. Welcome. I'm Gareth. I'm here in Yorkshire, England. We cover each episode, breaking down scenes, discussing storylines and themes and characters and actors. We get lots of great listener feedback, and I like to show my appreciation for that by responding to everyone. So if you do feel like sharing your thoughts on either the podcast or Dexter itself or both, drop me a line and I'll respond on the next podcast. Another thing is that we are spoiler-free. I only talk about what's come before and nothing yet to come. Beyond the normal theorising or speculation, I don't have any inside scoop and I don't watch any previews for upcoming episodes. With so many other podcasts covering Dexter these days, it's more of a crowded market. I hope you like what you hear and I hope you stick around. And if you do like what you hear, please maybe take a moment to leave a 5-star rating and maybe a review on whichever podcast platform you use. It would really help boost us in the rankings and help us get more easily noticed. Listener numbers, it's not something I don't think I ever really talk about, but they did hit a peak with New Blood, but are really down for this show, and I don't know if that's because the podcast bubble has burst or that there is just so much choice out there. Listeners maybe are spread more thinly over a larger number of podcasts. It's certainly not because fewer people are watching Original Sin itself. Apparently viewer numbers are good, which bodes well for future Dexter. But anyway, let's get on with it and dive into the new episode. We are talking about Original Sin, Season 1, Episode 5, F is for Fuck Up. Original air date, the 3rd of June, 2025. Written by Alexandra Franklin and Mark Mazinski. Both were previously staff writers on New Blood. And the episode's directed by Michael Lehman. Things are moving along at quite a pace this series. Showrunner Clyde Phillips has said the events of this show are taking place over roughly 2 weeks. So when you think about that, it's a massive escalation in Dexter's killing, going from never killing a person to 2, plus 1 attempted, and 1 in the offing. Poor Harry, he'll be feeling so overwhelmed he can't know what day of the week it is. What must he be feeling and thinking? No wonder he's not got the headspace to support Deb and dropping the ball at work. Anyway, we join Dexter right where we left him, a bit frozen in shock at what just happened. The poor driver of the car, he's devastated. My wife pointed out that this might be Dexter's first bit of collateral damage, the first innocent to be affected. We know how this kind of thing can traumatise someone for life, and this poor guy is just a wreck. The accident wasn't his fault, but he's killed someone. Nice performance by the actor, Tyler Lofton. He's a jobbing actor, been in a few things, but looks like he's waiting for his big break. Nice work in this episode, though. We'll see him again later. I liked Dexter calculating the time he had to clean up before the police arrived. And I loved how he underestimated. He was so close to being found. But the adrenaline seemed to give him a thrill, judging by the smile when the police started walking away. Lucky he had his box of forensic tools so he could do a decent clean-up job. He's certainly a quick learner and knows so much already. However, it's not prevented him royally cocking up this time with Mad Dog. I did worry about Harry's heart when Dexter got home. He's just had a heart attack and meant to be taking care of himself, but Dexter's not doing him any favours. The stress must be through the roof. Interesting comment from Dexter explaining why he takes the clothes off. His victims, he said about the plastic sticking better to bare skin. I don't remember him ever saying that before. Such a big part of his classic MO, and it's nice to have it confirmed why he does that. Dexter's so flippant and casual about the whole thing, but Harry obviously understands the gravity of it and the implication if the police suspect foul play, although we later find out that they don't, which is a let-off. Harry's really mad and scolds Dexter like a child, grounding him and restricting him to training exercises. This mention of training exercises to me suggests they've done this before and would account for some of the skills Dexter's got, like lock-picking. It does make me wonder, though, Harry's been so keen to keep Dexter away from having to kill a person, but if he's given him training in the past, not to mention the code itself, it does suggest that he always knew it would come to this.
What is the first goddamn rule of the code? Don't get caught. Why did you take them? I wanted to remember. Remember what? To kill.
You're listening to Dissecting Dexter.
Oh my God.
Dexter's stuck at home, bored out of his mind, but he's playing ball, literally, like Steve McQueen in The Great Escape. He knows he needs Harry's full support for this to work, so he's cooperating with his orders. Voiceover Dexter talks about how he had the final realisation that it wasn't death he needed, it was the act of killing itself, which is chilling. Harry's efforts provided some death in a fashion, handling cadavers at med school, analysing dead bodies and crime scenes at work, and he desperately hoped it would be enough, but Dexter's now absolutely confident that it never will be. Speaking of Harry, we see him being coached, ready for testifying in the Levi Reed case, and then a flashback with Laura, her work going well, and she offers him to stay over again, and while he puts up a degree of resistance, his penis gets the better of him again. Oh dear. We know his wife is at home, struggling massively with the grief of losing a child and the stress of trying to conceive again, but we knew at some point they'd have Deb, and when Harry gets home, we see Doris had laid the table for a celebratory meal and was ready to give him the happy news that she's pregnant. Harry should feel like the worst right now, and rightly so. He's been going through stuff too, but no one forced him into someone else's bed.
Hello, Deborah.
Deborah? Why so formal? Aren't you supposed to be at the station right now?
Dad told me to stay home.
You do know that you're a big boy who doesn't have to listen to Daddy anymore, right?
I guess. Deborah. 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 Deborah.
What the fuck? You're acting so strange.
When you really think about it, Deborah feels kind of weird in your mouth, huh? Deborah.
Shit! Didn't you see my note? These are for the volleyball team. How many have you had?
Just 4? Wait, no. 6.
Fuck, Dex. These are pot brownies? 1 would have been enough for a good high, but you've had 6?
I just want a snack.
I love the brother-sister time. Dexter getting high on the brownies was hilarious. So was Deb's reaction. He came out with all sorts of stuff, but she just didn't take it seriously, luckily. But wasn't it heartwarming for them to have this time together? Deb talking to a big brother about that guy Gio and asking him about Sophia. She so desperately needs this connection, to be close to her family and feel like they're there for her. We know, of course, that in the future Dexter will appreciate his connection to Deb too. We learn that it's been a year since Doris died, and Deb's understandably sensitive to that. We can cut them all a degree of slack because of this. A year in the grieving process is nothing for someone who's lost a parent or a partner. We already know how much Deb misses her and seriously needs that parental support, which Harry seems completely inept at giving her. Molly Brown does a really subtle job of switching to little girl mode when they talk about their mum. She's still growing up, despite going out clubbing and copping off with older guys. She needs a mum, and Molly shows that vulnerability really well. This scene, though, between the two of them, it was delightful to watch. And again, for me, emotional, knowing what's to come for the two of them, and for Deb in particular. Lovely work from Patrick and Molly here. On the plus side, next morning, Harry at least remembers the anniversary and the look on Deb's face when they agree to go to the grave later. Bless her. This is just the kind of family togetherness thing that she's needing, to feel the security of her family around her. When Harry says about the trial, you just know it's not going to work out, though. At work, we see Tanya watching the horse racing on a tiny portable TV. I remember these from back then. Little things. The picture was always shit. But Tanya says she's got money on one of the races. Now, I don't know if her gambling will come to anything later on, but obviously this is a setup for Dexter learning about M99, or atorphine as Tanya calls it. Dexter has to go and take fingerprints from the guy that killed Mad Dog, who's so cut up. Dexter observes how upset he is and that it's a normal human reaction to killing someone. It's a shame, but maybe not surprising, that he doesn't acknowledge that this poor man is probably emotionally scarred for life because of what he did. Like we said earlier, perhaps the first innocent victim of Dexter's darkness.
Dad, these feelings I can't ignore them. You taught me the code to help me channel my urges. What's the point if I can't even use it?
Killing a person, it's not that simple. Once you do it, it can't be undone.
You're listening to Dissecting Dexter.
We join Harry at the courthouse, Levi Reed's hearing, and we just knew this would happen, didn't we? I think we predicted it in the first episode. Reed would get off scot-free and Dexter would end up targeting him. He's a big guy, though. I did wonder when Harry was talking to Reed's alibi that it would come back to bite him, and it did. She scrubbed up well, although I did think that as a drug addict, wouldn't she be branded an unreliable witness, regardless, even if Harry had recorded his statement properly? Anyway, it's by the by now. Harry's mood afterwards leaves him neglecting his family and not being there for Deb like they'd planned. But Dexter fails too, going to steal some M99. I like the little moment of bonding with the horse though. But after this, he still doesn't rush to get Deb. He goes back to the office. My heart went out to Deb, sat there in a dress she hated but one her mum liked, waiting like an idiot for her rubbish family to come home. So she calls Gio and he takes her to the cemetery.
Hi, Mom. I'm wearing the pink dress you got me. Do I look like one of the Von Trapp kids? God, I hated this dress. You thought it was perfect for Grandma's birthday dinner. I freaked. So worried someone from school would see me. I know I wasn't always the easiest kid. Just ask the fucking swear jar. But now that you're gone, I miss you so much. I feel lost. I'm such an outsider with Dad and Dex. They don't even see me. I could really use someone to help me figure my shit out. At least someone to listen. Maybe it's time I stop waiting for Dad and Dex to change.
I have to ask, at this point, is anyone still not liking Molly Brown in this show? There were a few who didn't get her, certainly earlier on. This was really good work from her here. I used the word vulnerable earlier, and she is. She's fragile, a young girl grieving. Dexter's not capable of seeing what she needs, but Harry should be. He's letting her down massively, and this time will have a part to play in who she is down the road. This was a great moment for Molly to shine, and she should be proud of herself here. Great job and very moving. But it sounds like Deb's reached a decision. Rather than wait for Harry and Dexter to change and be better support for her, well, what's she going to do? Continue to rebel? I guess we'll see, although we don't wait too long. I wondered if last week was her first time sleeping with someone, but it looks like this week was the first time. In a car, on a dock. I'm assuming it's her first time. I think we're supposed to assume it is. Harry eventually gets to the cemetery, but too late to catch Deb. He sees the flowers and knows she's been there. We then see the flashback I talked about already when he learns that Doris is pregnant. But I didn't comment on the rest of it yet. We get another sweet interaction between him and young Dexter, and he also opens up to Laura about losing his son. The fact that he recognises the death was his fault is hugely significant for his character. I know grief can cause us to make poor decisions, and maybe that might excuse Harry the first time, but this is feeling more serious now. They've slept together twice. He's getting closer to one of her kids. It feels like the relationship's developing beyond just a shag. Blaming himself for Junior's death, then blaming himself for Laura later on. It's that emotional burden we've talked about before. Harry's lucky to keep his job. Spencer went to bat for him and he gets a slap wrist and pulled off the Jimmy Powell case. We see a positive side to Spencer here. He knows Harry didn't do anything on purpose and would have probably done the same thing with that witness. But perhaps Harry will reconsider how he judges a book by its cover moving forward. So, just as Harry's feeling pretty shit about himself, Dexter, being Dexter, does something so crazy and fucked up that I could hardly believe my eyes. It was brilliant, though. Brilliantly manic and bloody crazy, although Harry himself was about to drunkenly do something crazy, shooting Levi Reed. For a moment, I thought he was going to point his gun and then see Dexter take Reed down with the M99 from a distance. But no, Dexter injects Harry, undresses him, wraps him in plastic and puts him on the bloody table, just to make a point. Harry said about training exercises, but Jesus, I don't think this is what he had in mind. I love the oops after he dropped Harry, though. It reminded me of the moment he spontaneously hit Paul Bennett with the pan. That was another oops. It's a great scene, and surely it's going to be one of our favourites come the end of the season. Dexter's just giddy like he's struck gold. He's confident that he's nailed how to do it, how to take down and kill people. He's yet to refine disposal, but this is a big step towards the MO we know and love. The best bit for me was when he poked Harry on the forehead. What were you thinking? Just like we've seen him do many times before. That's Dexter gold right there. Dexter talks about how Doris used to see the best in everyone. Bless her. She had no idea who he really was or what he was wrestling with. Dexter credits Harry for never trying to change him. How important is that for a child, to feel like they have the complete support of their parent or parents? Again, I think of that nature versus nurture concept, and Dexter certainly had that from Harry, in principle anyway. It does feel like there was no good outcome for Harry in his nurturing of Dexter, though. He realised the best he could do was to channel Dexter into doing what he had to do in such a way that something positive came from it.
Dad, you shouldn't have been the one going after Levi Reed tonight. That's what you made me for. Let me be me.
Smelling salts. So you don't have to wait as long when you get Levi Reed. We already have the proof. Take him out. Clean this up.
My dad and I had been talking for 5 minutes, and all I heard was 3 words. Take him out.
Oh, that music always gives me chills. Now, there's probably a bit of manipulation going on here from Dexter. I mean, at the end of the day, he just wants to kill, and he just wants to continue to have his dad's support. This is maybe confirmed by the voiceover saying he just heard those 3 words, take him out. Now, how disturbing is it for him to think of his dad as someone who shaped him and trained him to be a tool of destruction? It's horrendous, really, but within the TV show, this is quite cool. Was this the last shred of resistance from Harry falling away when he says about smelling salts? Another piece of the classic MO coming into play? I thought that would be it for the episode, but we get a final scene. Dexter at the graveside of his adopted mother, the only mother he can remember. We know she had suspicions that something was off about him, but he knows she just wanted to help him. He comes out with something that really resonated with me.
Deb asked me what I miss most about you. I couldn't tell her the truth. I miss someone looking at me and seeing a chance at goodness, even if it wasn't there. Dad saw something different. That I could never be good. But maybe I could still do good. I hope he's right. And that it's enough to make you proud. Because there's no going back.
Already it sounds like he's written himself off as a monster, someone who is destined to kill forever. He says he misses someone looking at him and seeing a chance at goodness. From this, we can maybe assume he looks at his dad as someone who sees him as something dark, but hoping to use that for something good. Maybe it's the glimmer that will keep Dexter going, allowing him to live with what he does. It's quite a thought, really. We know there are people in his life and people yet to come who will look at him and see good. but they don't know the darkness that's in there. It's something that Deb will eventually wrestle with once she finds out the truth. We all want to think that people look at us and like what they see, don't we? That's the ideal, surely. Anyway, this was quite a big moment for Dexter, I think, the way he says, "Bye, Mum." It's like he's drawing a line under that part of his life and moving on with a new purpose, one with Harry's full support. Or so he hopes. Another good episode. I'm really enjoying this series. It is so far exceeding my expectations, and I'm finding very little negative in it. Does that make me a shill? Or is this show actually pretty good? I take back all my doubts about Patrick Gibson. I've bought right into him as young Dexter. He's doing a really good job. Molly Brown, though, was the MVP this week. No question about it for me. It looks like it's all systems go to take out Levi Reed next episode, and with an updated MO. What do you think about it?
Listener feedback.
If you want to drop me a line, you can get in touch at dissectingdexter@gmail.com, where you can also send a voicemail recording if you like. You can follow the podcast on social media. I'm on Twitter at DissectDexter. I'm on Blue Sky as Dissecting Dexter and Facebook.com/Dissecting Dexter. If you want to support the podcast, as I said earlier, you can leave a 5-star rating and maybe a nice review on your podcast app of choice. Or if you're listening to the YouTube version, please give a thumbs up and leave a nice comment. That would be brilliant. You can, if you want, go a step further and help support financially through the Patreon page. From as little as £1 a month, you can help keep the lights on here. And my thanks, as always, go out to all those who support me that way. Special thanks to our newest patrons, Laura and Lara. Lara's signing up as a Premier supporter, which is brilliant. Thank you so much. So, for your feedback this week, on Blue Sky, username DBW59FJ said, "Want to comment on the Dexter Bryan character portrayal of nature versus nurture? My impression, they're showing Dexter was not born that way, but made in the shipping container. It appears to me they're suggesting Bryan was born that way through the lizard tail incident." Thanks for that. This discussion of nature versus nurture is never going to go away. And it's an ongoing theme for the whole series, I think. Long-term listeners will know that this subject is a bit of a pet topic for me. Since first talking about it on the podcast, maybe in my rewatches of season 1 or 2, I've spent a lot of time studying mental health and have a lot of understanding how childhood trauma and nurturing environments or lack of can impact an individual moving forward. My personal belief is that people are not born bad, and we are all products of our life experiences, for better or worse. However, I'm inclined to think that sometimes there are exceptions. We've had one in the UK recently. A nurse was convicted of murdering multiple babies in her care. She even kept a diary that they found full of horrendous thoughts and scribblings. It was key evidence in her conviction. However, from what I've read, she's one of these exceptions, someone who has committed multiple murders, but as far as they've been able to tell, she had no traumas or mistreatment in her youth that could be identified as being key in corrupting her morality, for want of a better phrase. She had a regular, normal upbringing in a loving family, a good, nurturing childhood environment, you could say. So why did she do it? The simple answer is they don't know, and she's not talking beyond the appeal process. Maybe there are occasionally some issues with how someone's brain is wired, some physiological problem that affects the way someone thinks and identifies right from wrong, or ends up taking pleasure in other people's suffering, or enjoys being unkind to others. You know what I mean. Obviously, I'm not a medical professional and can only go by what I've read before and my own gut feeling. The point is that there are outliers, and you could perhaps argue in this scenario that Bryan is an outlier. Maybe born with a predisposition for bad, made all the worse by what happened to Laura Moser, followed by a lack of nurturing and love after that, stuck in the care system, unlike Dexter. Until Original Sin, I was always certain that Brian and Dexter had an equal start, but both experienced that horrific trauma, seeing their mother chainsawed to death and being left in a bloodbath until the police arrived. Then their paths diverged, both forever negatively affected and destined for, how shall I put it, deep, dark problems. Dexter semi-controlled by Harry and the code, while Brian was completely unnurtured and unloved and took a far more chaotic path. Now, in Original Sin, I have to concede that so far they look to be suggesting that he was already showing some bad signs with the animal cruelty. For me, I don't think they needed to. In fact, I think it would have been better if he'd been cute and cuddly like little Dexter. It would have made his eventual downfall all the more tragic. We'll probably see more as we go along, but I kind of hope they keep it relatively ambiguous and not just imply that he was born bad and Dexter wasn't. I'm sure we'll talk about this again at some point, but let's move on. Mamoon emailed with some more quickfire thoughts. He says, Dexter should have been listening to Dissecting Dexter when cleaning up the room. I know I would have done that. I would love for this show to take some serious risks. How cool would it be that Dexter finds out the person who kidnapped the judge's kid is someone in Miami Metro and he has to kill him? Is it just me, or the female police officer that came to check Mad Dog's house looked like Jennifer Carpenter with blonde hair? What are the chances we have another ice truck killer situation? The man Deb is seeing is the person who killed that kid. Dexter didn't need therapy or the code or Dr. Vogel. He just needed weed. I thought Dexter capturing Harry was Harry's fever dream, but no, what the fuck? Unclothed his dad and experimented on him. I still can't believe he didn't stop him completely. In my opinion, he is 100% responsible for Dexter and the way he turned out. The last point, original show music is back. Thanks, Mamoon. I was so pleased to hear the blood theme kick in this week. It was a perfect music drop at the perfect time. Your comment that Harry is 100% responsible for the way Dexter turned out, it links a little with what we were just talking about. For that to be true, though, we have to believe that therapy alone would have been enough to keep Dexter from killing. We'll never know if this would have worked. Clearly, Harry and Dexter himself didn't think so. We heard this week that Doris had her concerns, and we know from before that Dexter saw a psychologist. Dr. Vogel might not have been the only one. Of course, not everyone who suffers childhood trauma goes on to be a serial killer, or even someone with just a propensity for bad behaviour. It's not an exact science, is it? But I find it fascinating. Here's Travis.
Gareth, when I was a boy, still in college, I had to take a script writing class, and one of the assignments, we were given the option to write like a spec script for a show that we like. And I considered at the time, I mean, this was peak Dexter, season 3 or 4 was going on at the time, so I mean, it was peak Dexter mania for me. And I considered writing a spec script for Dexter, and the idea for the episode that I considered, though I never even put ink to paper, but I had it in my head, it was going to be a Dexter had messed up a kill or something, and the person was like laying comatose in the hospital, and Dexter had to sneak into the hospital and kind of like kill the guy before he wakes up and talks or something. I bring that up because that's kind of where I thought they were going with Joe Pantoliano's character. When he got hit by the car, I was kind of expecting or hoping that there'd be more to him, that maybe my old script idea would I'd get to see it played out better than I could ever create it. And, you know, Dexter would have to really, really fix his problems. But no, he just got hit by the car and died, which I suppose is realistic considering what it looked like when we got him hit. But I guess sort of like Sarah Michelle Gellar in my comment from last week, I'm surprised they got him for just this small part. But then again, maybe I'm overestimating the cultural cachet of Joe Pantoliano. Maybe he's not that big. Maybe he owes a lot of money to some people, or he owes some favors to somebody at Showtime. I don't know. But otherwise, this was a good episode. The first thing that I immediately think about was seeing Dexter high. Now, I remember in season 2, episode 11 of the original show, Left Turn Ahead, when Dexter is thinking about turning himself in as the Bay Harbor Butcher, and he's kind of got this moment of clarity, and he's really trying to settle his affairs. He calls up Deb, and he's acting a little strange, and Deb says, "Dexter, are you smoking something?" And he says, "No, but I've always been curious. Do you have any weed?" So here we see Dexter, I guess, eating weed, but he's never smoked weed, I suppose. So, we're still keeping consistent with what was presented in the previous series. My biggest complaint about the episode, I suppose, and I don't know if I'll feel alone in this, was the whole case dismissal scene, all that, the whole case getting thrown out. I guess I really don't know that much about the law. Maybe I'm speaking out of my butt, but I feel fairly informed as a U.S. citizen, and I don't watch a lot of junk crime procedurals on TV. I just feel like it's that realistic at all? The whole case is thrown out. You're free to go despite all the other evidence that you're at the crime scene. I'm not going to understand there may be some problems, but wouldn't the guy still be in custody or something? A mistrial or something? I don't know. It just felt, very convenient. And then, I don't know, somebody could tell me that's super realistic and, whatever. That's what was bugging me. I think Deb's little boyfriend looks exactly like that guy. Pardon me, I don't even know his name. Whoever the guy who Harry was trying to put away, Deb's boyfriend looked exactly like the man. You could have told me that was a deep fake younger version of the same actor or something. They look the same. And that guy's always talking about, I work for my dad or whatever. There's something there, right? That the guy that Harry and Dexter have planned to kill is the dad of Deb's new inappropriate boyfriend. That's got to be there. That's something. Little details I noticed to end this voice chat. The chomp stays in. I guess we're not getting rid of it. I keep thinking they'll get rid of it because they'll be embarrassed by it. But no, it's staying in. In that same intro, when we're showing close-ups of everybody getting ready in the morning, Deb pulls her hair back in a turtle shell hair clip. But then when she leaves the house, her hair's not even back. There's emergency numbers on the refrigerator. And all the numbers look like real numbers. They're not 555 numbers, which I really appreciate. But they all look like real numbers. But you better know I already tried to call them all, and they all don't work. Hi, Dexter is watching the television show Parker Lewis Can't Lose, and he's busting up, having a good time. That show was the first show, or at least one of the first shows, Clyde Phillips worked on. He co-created it. So, of course, he's plugging his own show. And, of course, it would take a humorless psychopath on drugs in order for someone to find it funny. My final thought is we're getting all these old people. We're getting glimpses of young characters, right? Young Hot LaGuardia, young Hot Batista. We got Masuka. We got all of our old characters. I know Dokes isn't in it, and realistically, he has no real reason to. Him or Rita don't really have any reason to be in the show. But all the public is wondering, everybody's asking, where's young Ramos and Soderquist? They were the steadfast Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of the original show, dude. Always there, always doing their job, never thanked. Where's young Ramos and Soderquist? This is what I want to see before the show ends in 6 episodes.
Thanks, Travis. Maybe Joe Pantoliano owes some money to Handsome Tony. I suppose they could be accused of stunt casting, having a recognisable name or face for what was, in the end, a one-episode character, one and done. I don't think we're overstating his name, though. He's a character actor who's been around for quite a long time with a huge resume. Maybe he's a big Dexter fan and his agent pushed for a part when they knew it was coming back. Your comments about the Reed case. Now, I had some similar misgivings, although I fully expected the case to get thrown out and Reed would end up on Dexter's table. Perhaps a more realistic outcome would be that Harry gets a bollocking for not taking that girl's statement properly, or at all. Someone might have an alibi, but it's then up to the prosecution to disprove that or work around it. It makes their job arguably harder, but really, they wouldn't have to work hard to prove she was a drug addict and present her as an unreliable witness. I know drug users could tell the truth just as much as someone who isn't, but in a courtroom, it wouldn't be too hard to discredit someone. But it was necessary for the plot, and like you said, Travis, a bit too convenient to just dismiss the entire case just because of this. Do we let it slide, though, because we're having such a good time with the show? Of course we do. That's a good catch, identifying the show Dexter was watching. Parker Lewis Can't Lose. I did wonder if there was an Easter egg there, but I didn't recognise it. I don't know the show. But I love that it's a nod to something Clyde Phillips did back in the day. As for Ramos and Soderquist, that's a very good question. I've posted on Twitter and we'll see if Scott Reynolds can provide any spoilers. Thanks again, Travis.
Hi Gareth, Chris here with my feedback on Dexter Original Sin, episode 5. Another wonderful episode, in my opinion. Dexter in Jeopardy was really fun to see for me this week, harkening back to the original series. Harry waiting up for Dexter like he was waiting up for a teenager coming back from a party, I thought was really interesting, but also quite sad when you think of the implications of why he was doing so. Also felt the same, although it was quite funny, with Dexter being grounded. Music continues to be great and a treat for me this week. Harry checking on the body was interesting. Would he have been willing to change the evidence to protect Dexter? I think he might have. Great line this week. Killing fed my dark passenger, not death. Great line, but very chilling when you think about it. Miami Metro continues to be great for me and the highlight of the series. I loved the 90s team all gathered round practicing Harry's testimony. I thought that was fantastic. 70s flashbacks with Laura wanting to take the kids to Disney brought back awful memories about the end of season 4 for me. No spoilers though for anyone who hasn't seen that yet. Stone Dexter was fun. I think him not liking being in control was also very telling about his character. The sibling relationship between Deb and Dex is sweet to see in this episode, and you have to feel for Deb. She just wants and craves normality. It was an interesting backstory about how their mum calmed Dexter down by tucking his hair behind his ears, something that we revisit with the horse later on in the episode. A reminder that we actually know very little about Doris. Perhaps we'll see more about her as the series continues. Could Tanya potentially have a gambling problem? Or is that me clutching at straws because I don't think she's been used properly just yet? I suppose we know that she's married and she has a daughter, which made teenage Chris very jealous as I was a huge Buffy fan. Harry wanting to show Dexter the consequences of his actions from last week by fingerprinting the driver of the car and showing how upset he should be. He wants Dexter to think about things, but Dexter's never going to be normal. The normal reaction that the driver had, and the juxtaposition of that is that Dexter's just jealous that he didn't kill it. Great voiceover by Michael C. Hall there. Lawyers really are scumbags when you think about it. That's all I thought about during the court scene. The M99 origins, I should say, is not how I thought it was going to happen. We'll talk about that in a wee bit, about the standout scene of the episode for me. I think overall Michael C. Hall's voiceovers this episode were great. I really did feel for Deb having to go to her mum's grave alone. Her new boyfriend showing more care and concern for her than her brother and her father. No wonder she's so messed up. I'd love to see the Deb swear jar. It must be massive. And it does actually highlight why Deborah may join Miami Metro later in life as a way to be closer to her family. Harry carrying young Dexter in the 70s scene and opening up to Laura instead of Doris made me think, could Laura and Harry have potentially been happy together had things happened differently? The Harry flashback scenes for me continue to be absolutely wonderful. I was blown away by Dexter M99ing Harry. I didn't see that coming at all. You trained me. Harry seeing Dexter as a tool. What a scene. Wow. I really loved Christian Slater's delivery of take him out. It was really, really good. I know there's moral questions there, but as a Dexter fan, I loved it. I really thought the 3 grave scenes were so different. Doris tried to help Dexter. Would it have helped? And does this actually villainise Harry even more? If Doris had her way, would Dexter have turned out different? All really interesting questions to think about. My wild speculation for this week is, could we potentially see Bobby, Spencer or Tanya in Dexter Resurrection? I wouldn't rule that out. I've tried to keep this really quick this week, and I want to wish everyone a happy new year. Thank you, Gareth, for everything you do, and all the best.
Thanks, Chris. Nice one. Ooh, M99 oranges. Not sure they sound very nice unless you want to sabotage your football team at half-time.
M99 oranges.
Great callback to Aster and Cody with the Disney reference. Chilling indeed when we remember season 4. You picked up on Tanya's gambling too. In my review, I wondered if it was simply a plot device to lead Dexter to getting the M99, but it could also be a seed planted about her having some money troubles, maybe. Perhaps leaving her open to some corruption down the road. Yeah, that scene with Harry on the table, it was really good. Harry being painted as a villain of sorts. That's a tough pill to take and hard to say out loud, because the impact of losing his son like that and knowing it was on his watch, that can't be overstated. The burden on his mind must be enormous and informs a lot of what we see him do. I'm not excusing him having an affair, not at all, and I've long called him out as a bad parent, even borderline child abuser, for grooming his son to be a killer. Having seen what we've seen in Original Sin, I'm a little more sympathetic in that regard. We can see what may have motivated him to protect his son at all costs, not wanting to lose another one. Kids make parents crazy, that's a fact. It's really interesting though, and Harry's certainly not coming out of this smelling of roses. Moving on, we have an email from Maria Vazone, who says, "The dark humour I love so much about these series is in full swing in this episode, making it darker but also somehow funnier than the previous ones. Harry checking out the body had me chuckling with the looks like the truck won remark. Also, they're not usually that gory. That was unexpected to see them showing how mutilated Mad Dog was. I think Harry losing the court case was very predictable, as was Doris becoming pregnant as he gets involved with Laura Moser, but also necessary. If Harry is going to be working closely with LaGuerta, it does raise the question, why didn't she talk more to Deb in particular about him? I can understand why not to Dexter, but as a fellow police officer, I would have thought it would have come up more often with Deb. But hey, maybe it did, just off camera. One thing I keep hearing about is people pointing out how Harry was a ladies' man, but I seem to remember that most of Deb's interviews with his former CIs, showing while some of them had some sort of crush on him, it wasn't reciprocated. Deb's scene at the grave is just heart-wrenching. I got some serious Jennifer Carpenter vibes off Molly Brown, both in that scene and when she finds Dexter high. Her face acting when she told him he'll just probably go to sleep was so spot on. I love to see them having some quality time between them. It used to be such feel-good moments in the original series, the steaks and beer nights. Hopefully this will open the door for more of these interactions. Is it me, or does Deb really seem to have a type? Gio looks like a Rudy Anton Cross with the Lundy charm. I can't express how much I love the whole sequence of Dexter taking Harry out to prove a point, and how poignant the whole scene was. The Dexter MO we know and love really making its first appearance. It was really the highlight of the episode, and it was some fabulous acting by Patrick Gibson. That smile as he crumpled the note, the rawness of it all, the confidence, the look on his face while he holds the knife, everything was just perfect. All in all, this episode really shined in all the aspects that make me love these series so much. The dark humour, Dexter's cluelessness with social cues, Dexter in jeopardy, a few times actually, how genuinely he cares for his sister without even recognising it. On a side note, M99 is not used on horses. The common sedation for horses is ditomidine, and butorphanol. I have so many complaints about that barn scene, but I suppose it's kind of irrelevant for the purpose of this story. Thanks so much, Maria. Great to hear from you. As you've already heard, I'm with you about Molly Brown. Great work this week. and through the series, I think. I also loved the humour this week. Some really nice moments. The Dexter Deb stuff was great, and a nice reminder of those steak and beer nights they shared back in the original series. About M99, I've looked, and it certainly is used in veterinary medicine and has been used for horses, but perhaps other tranquilizers are more commonly used these days. I certainly don't have any expertise on that. The barn scene served a dramatic purpose, which you've said, but the moment that bothered me was when the vet comes back and Dexter just kind of slips through an opening straight into the stable like there's a big open doorway there. From the front, it looked like all the stables had doors just opening out to the front, but this one had a direct door from the vet's room, which seemed odd. Maybe that's the only way they could make the scene work when they filmed it. I don't know. It just felt a little awkwardly done to me. Okay, here's Nick.
Hey Gareth, hey everyone, Nick here. I just wanted to say that I think Original Sin continues to be super impressive. I think this episode 5, is maybe my favorite episode of the series so far. Even though I feel like I know Dexter's story like the back of my hand, this show is finding ways to keep me guessing pretty constantly, and it's really resonated with me in the same way that the early seasons of the show did, so I'm loving that. I've said it before, but I think Dexter works as a character and as a show because it finds really unconventional ways of speaking to these universal truths of what it means to be a human being. Sure, it's, fun to watch Dexter take out bad guys every week, but on a deeper level, it's always made me reflect about what it really means to be burdened with mortality and humanity, and I think this episode really nails that aspect. It's an episode about reaching a point in life and realizing that it's time to grow up, take responsibility, and weather adversity. But as the show always does, it does it through a really twisted lens, and I love that. So in regards to the episode itself, a couple quick things I just wanted to mention. One, I loved the Dexter and Deb bonding scene with the pot brownies. It was classic, and it really gave their relationship a chance to deepen finally. And I thought it was really interesting that they brought up the hair tucking memory, and maybe Gareth, maybe you could help me, or maybe somebody out there remembers, or I'm sure someone else will bring it up too. But in the original series, I think in a conversation with Deb, or maybe it was Lila or something, he talks about a memory he has of his mother doing that, tucking his hair behind his ear. And I thought he was talking about his biological mom, Laura, in the original series, not Doris. But I could be wrong. Maybe somebody could point to which episode that was. I'd love to go back and check that out. But still, it was a cool memory to see come back. 2, I loved the story behind him deciding to seek out M99 and the way that he did. And I was especially pleased to see this loose connection to New Blood kind of created here, because in New Blood he went and stole ketamine from a vet, and it kind of recontextualizes that scene for me, because it feels to me like 30 years later, when he realized he needed access to something like this, he went back to basics and did the thing that he did in 1991. He went and stole it from a vet. So I thought that was really cool. And lastly, of course, I just want to shout out to the kill scene this week, or quote unquote kill scene. It took me by surprise, man. I knew he was going to do something to prove himself capable to Harry, but I figured he was just going to swoop in and take out Levi Reed before Harry had a chance to do it. Instead, he tranked his dad and put him on a kill table just to prove a point, and I think that was amazing. That whole scene was perfect. Harry looked genuinely scared for a moment and maybe thought that Dexter was going to kill him. I also think Patrick Gibson really channeled Michael C. Hall throughout the episode, but mainly in the kill scene for sure. There were just tons of little ticks and movements and mannerisms that just felt so authentic to the character. I loved it. It kind of feels like Patrick has maybe found his stride in playing the character, and I think that's great. I also loved, this is a little bit later in the scene, after he's taken Harry off the table, but Michael C. Hall's line, or in the voiceover, when he says, "I'd been talking to my dad for 5 minutes, but all I heard were 3 words: take him out." And I think that's really important because it highlights something that's always been very important to me about the character, which is to remind the audience that at the end of the day, even though we like Dexter, he is manipulative, selfish, and ultimately very flawed. So I think that was a great way to do it, and I think Michael C. Hall's voiceover in this episode was on point. Anyways, I think, just generally speaking, I really love the approach they're taking to this series, and that it's kind of there to enrich the story by fleshing out Harry's backstory and motivation. In the end, I think we're going to realize that Harry was way more morally compromised than we originally thought and way more complicit in Dexter's crimes. And I think that's kind of exciting. At this rate, it's looking like he's going to start using Dexter as his own personal hitman, and I'm here for it. That's super fucked up to say, but it's unexpected, and I think for that reason, I'm really enjoying the series. So anyway, that's all I got this week, guys. I look forward to hearing everybody else's thoughts on the episode, and I will be back next week for episode 6. Cheers.
Thanks, Nick. Some good thoughts about the wider themes of the show there, like asking questions of our humanity juxtaposed with what we see Dexter doing. And I think this is especially true of the portrayal of Harry. Not wanting to repeat what we've already said about him today, because we've said a lot. But you could say, although the circumstances are exceptional and fictional, he's behaving perhaps like a lot of parents might. The point about Doris tucking Dexter's hair behind his ear, I don't remember the moment from the early show when he talked about this, so I can't really comment. But if true, it's a really nice callback and perhaps confirms he was referring to something his adopted mother did rather than his real one. We've seen a few of these little callbacks, and I love the attention to detail and making this finer connective tissue to small things in the original series. Kudos to the writers, I think. Hugely important point emphasised there, Nick, and one I've talked about a lot on the podcast. Dexter is a killer at the end of the day. It's only a positive byproduct that he targets killers. They were keen to remind us of that in no uncertain terms at the end of New Blood. And it turned off a lot of fans who loved the character, but as you know, for us, it was a stark reminder of who he really is, despite the charm, the donuts, and all the quirky stuff that we enjoy. Okay, email now from Andrea in Barcelona. She says, I'm totally on board with Travis's Not My Biney campaign. I would like to see a more nuanced character development for him. Dexter good, Biney bad is a bit reductive. I think there might be more to these scenes, though. Maybe the lizard torture is showing his interest in limbs later in life. If he did kill the boy in this episode, it would make sense since he removed his finger and now murdering him with an ice pick is a nod to the ice truck killer. I quickly looked up lizard tail removal and it seems that they grow back within a few weeks to months. I did this since I noticed the tail still moving in the scene. Maybe this is more than simply animal torture and he's conducting an informal experiment. It could depict his level of intelligence and how he went on to become a doctor. Maybe there's more to it. Let's hope. Just thought, if Dexter was pre-med and they both live in Miami, did they possibly go to the same university? It's a big school, so it is possible they wouldn't have known each other, but Biney could have been observing him. Maybe we saw him in the restaurant because he realised he would no longer be seeing Dex around the uni. I think Deb's drug use is a bigger deal than it's being made out to be. It is actually quite observant of Harry to notice she's on drugs. A lot of teenagers do drugs to get their parents' attention and it often goes unnoticed. That said, I suppose it is neglectful to not follow up. I think the drug use explains the teen drama component of Deb's character to an extent. If she were coming down from cocaine, her mood swings and irritability would be part of that. She also mentions in this episode her mum died last year. I don't think we had such a specific timeline before this. To lose a parent at that age is a trauma that could possibly explain her changing character that seems to be bothering some people. Acting out sexually and using drugs, especially for a young person in Miami at that time, would be an easy shift to make. And from a practical standpoint, making a woman in her 30s look like a young teenager is no small feat, so the heavy bangs and glasses make sense for the costume department from the original show. I guess they're regretting that choice now, haha. I'm intrigued with Dempsey's character. Spencer, it seemed they were trying to get us to sympathise with him. He seems to have a loving relationship with his son, even if a bit disconnected, that can happen when someone feels replaced in a family. Another thing I noticed about this scene, what kind of parents don't allow their nearly teenage child to eat a chocolate bar? That seemed like a strange level of control for someone his age. I'm wondering if the contents of his stomach will come up later, as they did for the young victim in this episode. Thanks, Andrea. Some really good thoughts and ideas here. Well done. I love your speculation about Brian. If true, it fits in more with my hope that neither Dexter or Brian were born bad. Maybe the lizards were simple childhood exploration. Every child explores its world and with their developing brains. In fact, it's worth saying that our brains don't stop developing until we're into our early 20s. Thinking about the 20-year-old Dexter and 17-year-old Deb too. But with a child's developing brain and still developing sense of right and wrong, maybe Brian could be forgiven for what outwardly looks like horrible animal cruelty. Rather, it was a consequence of his fascination and natural curiosity. Maybe the jury's still out then, but like I said, this is a huge subject, but something, as you can tell quite clearly, it's something I find really fascinating. Great idea that Brian may have gone to the same university. We know he was in the care system, so I don't know if he could have afforded university. Who knows? Maybe he got a grant or a scholarship or something. It's certainly plausible that they went to the same place. Also, some great thoughts about Deb and Spencer. Great job, Andrea. Thank you. Hope to hear from you again soon. Okay, we'll get this episode wrapped up in shrink wrap and uploaded to the internet for your listening pleasure. Dexter's got his next target, and it's a big one. I have a feeling we'll be getting another kill table next week, but while 20-year-old Dexter moves further along his road as a serial killer, little Dexter is moving ever closer to the tragedy that will shape his life. I'm guessing we'll see that in the finale. But for now, let's look forward to Levi Reed getting the table treatment. So, until we reconvene to dissect some more Dexter together, I will say thank you ever so much for your feedback. Do you know, I have to say, I get blown away every series how the feedback that you guys send in, it's so insightful and really, it helps me develop my own thoughts and theories for the show, and it enhances my viewing experience. So I know a lot of you feedback and say that that's what this podcast does for you, but it's a two-way street, and I'm grateful for that. Money can't buy this kind of interaction, can it? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. As I say, the quality of the feedback that you guys send in, and this goes back to, right back to the early days of the podcast, consistently top-notch, and, I appreciate you. So yeah, thanks for the feedback. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks to my wonderful, wonderful Patreon supporters. Take care, guys, and we'll speak again very soon. Bye for now.